the central philosophy of Buddhism, is not what we call in the West a philosophy at all. It's a method for changing your state of consciousness. In other words, it's not a system of ideas such as propounded, say, by Plato or by Kant or by Hegel. It's a dialectical method. That is to say, dialectic being in the sense of a discourse between a teacher and a student, the purpose of which is not to explain or inculcate a certain set of ideas, but to change the sensation that you have of your own existence. The very crux of Buddhism, the thing that is called bodhi, which means to be awake. A person who is under illusion, maya, thinks of himself basically as a victim caught in a trap, subject to fate, the will of God, or whatever you want to call it, who got involved in life passively. That's why I use the word victim. And he has this, therefore, the sensation of his consciousness as being a kind of passive, but nevertheless very delicate and tender receptor of everything that goes on, so that life in general happens to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you say, well, it's awful. I can't get myself out of this trap. So the technique of the philosophical dialogue that I was describing is to get you to drop your defenses. In other words, you can discover as a physical sensation that you tend to be on the defensive all the time. You are exerting through every muscle a resistance against the world, all of which is excessive. The lack of trust in one's own life, the perpetual attitude of defensiveness, is a result of a kind of misfeeling of one's own existence as something alien to the universe that endures, as I said, and is simply a passive recipient of experience. So then, the whole process of a therapeutic dialogue, which was invented by this marvelous man, Nagarjuna, carried the Buddha's dialogue to a full conclusion. We can go further today. This thing hasn't stopped at all. It isn't something that we go back to as a past and say, well, we're going to tell you all about a thing called Buddhism, which is a fixed body of practices and beliefs in which certain people in Asia believe, and if you're interested, you can believe in it too. It's not like that at all. The advantage that a Buddhist has is that he has no opinions that he is trying to put over on you. He's only trying to help you to get rid of your opinions. That is to say, to get rid of any fixed view of the world and of yourself. Because we use what are called views, in Sanskrit drishti, as methods of clinging to existence. There is something that is called in Sanskrit sakaya drishti, which means the view of separateness, the view of your being, this thing that I was talking about, the separate, insular recipient of experience. Say, you have feelings, but the language that we speak compels you to say, you have feelings, as if you were something on the one hand and your feelings were something else on the other. You say, you have thoughts, as if the thinker stands on the one hand and inspects the thoughts on the other, so that one has a view of life in which there is a panorama of thoughts, of feelings, of sensations, going along constantly. But one can say constantly because of the impression that you are distinct from them, standing aside from them as the constant inspector of the procession. And so you get the feeling that you endure precariously, threatenedly, while the procession of thoughts and feelings goes by you. Now, you can very easily see that this is the result of the memory process, which gives an illusion of constancy in the flow. And therefore, in the same way that the famous old Buddhist analogy, when you rotate a burning brand in the darkness, you give the illusion of a continuous circle of fire because of the memory in the retina, where the impression of the spark doesn't fade out immediately, but lingers. And so, as you see this thing in front of your eye, it seems to form a circle, whereas there is no circle, there is only a moment, the instant of flame. So Buddhists argue, there is only this moment. And actually, you who come in at the door are not the same people who are now sitting here. Just as in the whirlpool in water, there is no constant water. There is only going on a continuous behavior, whirling in the water, but no water stays in it. So in exactly the same way, you who came into the door a few minutes ago and are now sitting here are entirely different. Only you are clinging to the idea of your continuity. Actually, there is only the instant, what is called in Sanskrit the kshana. Life is instantaneous. There is this moment, and this is eternity. Only you are stringing the moments together, and you are creating time out of eternity. You are identifying yourself, in other words, with all the things that have happened to me, and you're worrying about all the things that will. But actually, you are never anywhere but now.